I love the weird, outlandish, extreme, broken games. The kind of game that makes people say, "You won't believe that this exists." Even if I don't enjoy playing them in the moment, I find it interesting to experience the worst of the worst. Part of that developed into what I normally do on this channel, which is catalog Japanese game consoles. If I go through every game on a system one by one, then I will find the notorious. I'll find games that are infamous in Japan and almost unknown outside of it. Major Dream, Major Wii, Perfect Closer, yes, that whole thing is the title, is easily the worst baseball video game I've ever played. Now I know some of you got pulled in by the video title and algorithm, and you're going, so what? It's a baseball game, how bad could it be? And those people watching this video who are longtime viewers of my channel went, oh no! Because, you see, baseball has been my bane. Not that bane. For a long time, every single Japanese video game company had to have their own series of baseball video games. And that meant there's a lot of them. And almost all of them were indistinguishable from each other. In 1989, over 10% of all video games released in Japan were baseball video games. Seriously, it was that bad. So I have seen the highs, the lows, and the countless middle when it comes to baseball as a video game. And Major Dream is by far the worst. And the really cruel twist is, I didn't even play the bad version. The first step in decoding Major Dream, Major Wii, Perfect Closer is knowing what Major Dream is. Major Dream is the official English title of a franchise just called Major in Japan. It's one of those things that was a giant monster hit for decades in Japan and got virtually no attention in the US. The basic gist of it is that Major is the life story of Goro Shigeno. His father was a professional baseball player, and Goro wants to follow in his footsteps. The story covers just about his entire life in baseball. It begins before he started school, and ends with his retirement from the Japanese Professional Baseball League when he's 40. The story doesn't quite take place in real time, but it's closer than you think, with Goro's life progressing about twice as fast as time in the real world. Perfect Closer was released right in the middle of an animated adaptation, which itself aired for 6 seasons. The point of all of this is that Major was a really big deal, and kind of at the peak of its popularity right when this game came out. Perfect Closer didn't exist in a vacuum either. It was the third Major Dream game released in 2008. In February of that year, you had Major Dream, Major Wii Nagero Gyro Ball, and that game told the story of Goro's high school years. Then in July, there was Major Dream, Major DS Dream Baseball, and that game uses the exact same story arc as Perfect Closer, so we're gonna move past it fast. And finally, on December 11th, 2008, you had Major Dream, Major Wii, Perfect Closer. And that release date's actually kind of important to the story, because just like in the US, the last month and a half of the year was the most important time to get your game on shelves. In the US, we've got Christmas gifts. In Japan, kids got money for New Year's and would go out and spend it on whatever hot new game was out there. So developer Dream Factory was on a deadline for this one. And publisher Takara Tomy is best thought of as the LJN of Japan. They made a lot of awful games based on licenses and had a notoriously bad reputation. Dream Factory had been struggling for a long time as a developer at that point, and they didn't last another year after Perfect Closer. Tomy, as a giant toy company, is still around, though their video game output has slowed down a lot. That one is probably for the best. So what was the result of pushing Perfect Closer out the door months early so they could extract that New Year's money from unknowing kids? Well, take a look. You're looking at some of the most notorious video game bugs in Japan. None of this occurs consistently, but I could make it happen by deleting all of the save data, starting the game up, creating the autosave file, and then immediately jumping into a match between the Bats, which is Goro's team, and any other team. I tried for about 2 hours to recreate the most famous bug in the game. Sometimes, during close-ups of his pitching, Goro's head will be on backwards. Now, it doesn't seem like I'm alone with regards to not being able to replicate this. Almost every video I could find didn't have the head spin occur. Instead, they all seem to use the same screenshot. But there is one video I could find online that has it, from Yuo1232. So here it is in all of its Exorcist glory. Another complication for me in replicating this bug is that it doesn't happen in my copy. So here is my physical copy of Major Dream, Major Wii Perfect Closer. And it seems that I have a kind of rare fixed version. Kind of rare because who was going to buy a copy of this game after its initial release? But Tomy had to make it because of another bug in the game. Sometimes while loading matches, the game would just freeze. And what was happening is it was getting into an infinite loop in the code with some especially processor-intensive instructions occurring. If you let it sit on that frozen screen for about 5 minutes, Perfect Closer would cook your Wii from the inside out. That's right, this game could brick your console. And of course, since it was stuck in an infinite loop, you couldn't interrupt it with the home button or anything like that. You had to unplug the system to get it to stop. Well, you can't have a console-breaking bug in your game, so there are fixed versions out there that clean up a lot of the technical issues, but you still have the game. A couple more highlights of that initial release include some real doozy of fielding problems, including a foul ball can bounce back in and it counts as fair, and if someone successfully steals a base, it resets the batter's count. You'll notice that when you're facing backwards and you hit the ball, it always just drops into the infield, and then the catcher has to chase it down regardless of where the ball winds up. That's due to other problems with fielding that they didn't correct in the revised version, but I'll get to that. There's other graphical glitches like vertices on polygons going way out of bounds, and there's a glitch involving manipulating the save file that will jump story mode right to the very final at-bat. That one makes the speedrun of the game less than 3 minutes long. So that's a few of the major technical problems with the game. But let's say you actually tried to play Major Dream, Major Wii Perfect Closer. What's it actually like? There's 3 major options for gameplay. Story mode, which replicates a small portion of the plot of Major. Exhibition mode, which lets you pick out 2 teams and play a game of baseball. That's where you can go if you wanted to torment a friend with it and make them play against you. And practice mode, which lets you practice pitching, batting, or fielding, and here you're given 3 lives and scored on how well you do. Story mode has a lot of ground to cover. Practice mode is only good if you're setting up the bug to skip the entire game, so I'm going to focus on exhibition mode while we get the gameplay down. You'll notice that Perfect Closer is set up to use the Wiimote in the sideways position. Basically, buttons 1 and 2 are used for everything, including picking from menus. There is an alternative control scheme that uses motion controls, but you saw how buggy the game was already. Let's not add complications. First thing you have to do is pick out your team. Goro's team is the Bats, the default option, and his rival is on the Falcons, which is the next one over. There are 4 blank slots at the bottom that are filled in if you create a team in edit mode, and that will let you mix and match players from any team, plus create your own players. There's also a few question mark teams, and I have no idea how to unlock those, if they ever unlock. I've completed the story mode and gotten some of the special events in it, and they're all still question marks. I can't even find evidence that anyone has ever unlocked those teams. Is it a bug? Is it supposed to be that way? Who knows? After you select your team, you've got a whole menu of options for how you want to play. You can set the number of innings between 3 and 9, if you'll go into extra innings, if the fielding will be totally automatic or semi-automatic. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. And if the AI is easy, normal, or hard difficulty. I played through story mode on easy, and in the roughly dozen exhibition mode games I played, I was using normal difficulty. Normal difficulty is also trivially easy. Finally, you can change your batting lineup, which is absolutely meaningless in this game, and then we play ball. As you might expect, things vary depending on if you're on offense or defense. So let's look at offense first. The way batting works is that there's a box of 9 squares that makes up the strike zone. You position your bat somewhere inside there, and the bat will cover 2 of those squares. Pressing button 2 swings the bat, and button 1 will set you up for a bunt. The pitcher throws the ball, and then your batter automatically positions the bat directly in front of it. No need to adjust the position yourself, it's all done for you. And then you might think, okay, I still need to watch for when the pitch goes outside, or maybe it shifts around a little. No. The computer opponent never throws balls, only strikes. And your batter is always accurate to where they need to swing. All you have to do is hit button 2 at the right moment, and as far as I can tell, the difficulty settings just change the window for when you need to swing the bat. The first thing you're going to notice about hitting is that there are 2 results that come up way more often than anything else. Foul balls, and surprisingly enough, home runs. It's practically a home run derby out there. When I was playing, the games had more home runs than base hits. That's not an exaggeration either. Something special about the home runs is if that somehow someone has reached third base and you hit a home run, you'll see the guy on third base still hanging out there as the person who hit the home run crosses the plate. The next thing you're going to notice about hitting is that Perfect Closer is a deterministic game. What I mean by that is there's no physics modeling here. It isn't taking into account the position of your bat and the speed of the ball and doing some calculations to figure out where things should go. There's maybe 24 possible hits. And so if you play a lot of Perfect Closer in quick succession, like I was unfortunate enough to do, then you get to see the same plays over and over and over again. The effect is more like one of those miniature toys where you have a spring-loaded bat and flick marbles away, and then which pocket you wind up in tells you what the outcome was. Because this doesn't feel like baseball at all. Now you might think, okay, someone's gotten on base, how do I position somebody to steal? Well, you can't. Just at random, you'll see a flash of a player's eyes, which never match the actual person, and then they'll start running for the next base. Speaking of that lack of matching, when it comes to the distant view of the action on the whole field, there aren't multiple skins for the players on the team. No matter who was at bat, what race they were, or if they had outlandish facial hair, when a player on the bat's team hits the ball, they suddenly transform into a blonde white guy. That's how awful batting is, but maybe pitching and fielding is better? And if you're asking that question, have you just not been paying attention to the previous 13 minutes of this video? On the mound, you've got 4 options for pitching, assuming you're playing as the bats and thus have Goro. You've got the straight, which is his fastball, a changeup and slider, and his signature super pitch, the gyro ball. Now you might think that all of the pitchers have some kind of stylish technique, but no, just Goro. Okay, there's a few opposing pitchers who can do some kind of underhand toss that gets kind of wavy, but that's the only other kind of pitch that you see. You select what pitch you're going to use with the D-pad, and then press button 2. During the windup, you pick where you're going to aim your pitch, and that option is constrained to the strike zone. The pitch also always goes exactly where you aim it. There's no concern about control or anything like that. When you're pitching, you can throw balls if you really want to, Press and hold button 2 during the windup, and you can aim your shot outside of the strike zone. There's no good reason to do this, though. In fact, there's no reason to aim your pitch. The computer opponents react exactly the same, whether it goes straight down the middle or goes at a curve. Even if you're intentionally throwing a ball, they can still hit it exactly the same. There does seem to be some small probability shift depending on the pitch that you're throwing, so a gyro ball is a lot more likely to be a strike than any other pitch, but it can still be hit. The pitchers have a stamina meter, and this recovers a little bit after every batter. You know, just like real baseball games. And just like real pitchers, throwing fastballs costs no stamina. On the other hand, throwing a curveball costs a little bit of stamina, and using the gyro ball costs a lot of stamina. You get back about 50% of a gyro pitch's stamina with every batter, so it makes sense to use your big pitches fairly often. Now, if your stamina does run out, you can't switch pitchers. Even though Gordo's a relief pitcher and closer, there is no option in this game to change pitchers. Whoever is on the mound has to stay there for the whole game. Let's say that someone tries to steal a base while you're pitching. What do you do about that? Well, the answer is absolutely nothing. All of that gets resolved automatically, regardless of what your fielding settings are. Now, if the ball is hit and you have semi-automatic fielding, then you might see a little blue circle where you can steer one of your players towards it. Except, once they're in the circle, they're automatically locked in place, which means a lot of the time you don't get to do anything anyways. The player you're controlling is often not the best one for handling that play, and sometimes with a slow-moving infield ball, the pitcher will just vanish, and the catcher will have to run out and get it. And sometimes with these hits, the player that you're controlling to chase after the pop fly isn't the one who will actually catch it. The player that will catch it is already automatically moving in to catch for you, and it's impossible for the player that you are controlling to get to the ball anyways. Remember that there's only a fairly small number of hits and plays that occur, so this scenario actually happens quite a bit. You don't control which base they'll throw to. You just have to hope that things play out appropriately. Of course, if you have the fielding set to automatic, then you have no control over this at all. You just watch and see what happens. And that's how you play baseball in Major Dream, Major Wii Perfect Closer. There isn't a system in the game that isn't broken in some way, and the way that everything is implemented makes playing the game incredibly boring. Frankly, seeing the weird bugs happen is more interesting than the game itself. But these exhibition matches aren't the real part of Perfect Closer. That's the story mode. The way story mode plays out is you get a very long cutscene, fully voice acted by the cast of the show, and then that will lead into some small portion of a game. And you'll normally be given a goal like, prevent this person from hitting a home run, or don't let the other team catch up to your score. One significant problem with that is that the story presented in the cutscenes doesn't match the action on the field. I was winning by more than 12 points, but then we went into the cutscene, and the story told me that my team was losing. Or Gordo might have batted last in the previous inning, but at the start of this inning, it requires that he's at bat again. The disconnect between gameplay and story is constant and extreme. There's another bigger problem with the story mode, but it's one that I see in a lot of licensed games. They were definitely expecting that you were familiar with Major Dream. There's no introduction to the characters, no backstory provided, no character bios that you can look at, and that has two significant consequences to the story. First, it has a bad tendency to skip over a lot of character scenes. Yeah, there might be a 10-minute long cutscene in between playing baseball, but the game jumps over all of the development that connects those scenes. You'll see what I mean when I get to the summary, but there's a lot of stuff that just gets tossed aside in one text box, and then you're into the next big dramatic moment. The other thing is that a lot of basic character information comes across as huge, out-of-nowhere plot twists. It happens a few times, but there's one thing in particular that really threw me off. The story mode takes about 3 to 4 hours to play through, and I'm not going to show you all of that. I mean, look at the runtime on the video. I am going to summarize it though, because we're going to get out there. If you're reading Major, the story here is from volumes 47 to 54, almost right in the middle of the series. Okay, last chance to back out before I start spoiling everything. Ready? Here we go. We open with Goro arriving in the US at LAX. He's come because a major league team is holding open tryouts, and he's headed to their training camp in Arizona. We're told that as soon as Goro was off the plane, he was pickpocketed and lost everything. So now he's hitchhiking to Arizona. He's picked up by Yaginuma, another Japanese baseball player headed to the same tryout. Yaginuma was on a high school team that played in the Koshien tournament, the giant nationwide high school baseball tournament that's one of the biggest sporting events of the year in Japan. They show up at the tryouts, and Goro doesn't have any equipment. No cleats, no glove, just the t-shirt and blue jeans that he's wearing. One of the trainers lets him borrow some equipment, and it's worth pointing out at this moment that a lot of these American baseball players coincidentally speak Japanese. The language barrier comes up a couple of times in the story, and one of those American baseball players is handy to translate for Goro, but at some point it's just forgotten. No one mentions anything about Goro learning English, and when he does speak English in the game, he's obviously supposed to be struggling with it. It's just something in the story where first there's convenient coincidences, and then it's ignored. Goro gets onto the mound and throws a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. That's enough to get people to pay attention to him, and the coach wants to see his curveball next. But Goro isn't some wimpy pitcher who will throw curves. He only throws fastballs. On top of that, he'll only throw them straight over the plate. The coaches are shocked and about to kick him to the curb right there, but then enters Bolton, the star player for the Salmons. Bolton wants Goro to pitch to him, and you finally get a chance to play some baseball. The first pitch goes past him, and Bolton's impressed, and then he connects with the second one and hits a home run. Bolton mocks Goro and then leaves, and then the coach tells Goro that he's passed the first round. Though Goro doesn't understand that at first and demands another chance to pitch against Bolton. Round 2 of the tryouts is a team match. The 7 players who passed the first round of tryouts, plus 2 more people who just happen to be around, play against the local minor league team. And the minor league team is given a 10-run advantage that the tryout team has to overcome. And then you're playing baseball again, and you're told that you have to win the game in 3 innings. Well, you're playing the team pulls together and still loses badly. But it was all part of the test. After that short match, only Goro and Yaginuma are signed. Yaginuma is going to play AAA ball, while Goro is being sent to play in a major league game. Goro's feeling all cocky because now he's a major league pitcher, but his attitude angers the Salmon's star pitcher Sanchez. Sanchez challenges Goro to a pitching duel. They set up a gate the size of the strike zone, and will each throw 10 pitches through it. But the goal isn't to just pass through the gate, it's to hit the inside of the gate. And of course, this exciting, action-packed pitching scene is quickly skimmed over in text boxes. Do you think they'd actually put a mini-game here? No, that's too high effort for perfect closer. Instead, you're told that Sanchez can do this every time, and Goro only manages to do it with his final throw. Goro's feeling pretty sorry for himself after that, but he gets a talking to by his only friend on the team, Fox, who reminds him just how lucky he is to have been immediately called up to the majors, and how many people are struggling to hold on to that spot. And for his first game, Goro's also debuting a new pitch, because he's added the changeup to his menu. The conditions for getting past this part of the story are simple. Don't give up 8 runs before the 5th inning. The first inning puts Goro up against the strongest hitter in all of Major League Baseball, and they manage to get a home run off of him. Goro sticks with it and faces off with him again, and again, and again. But the time in the 6th inning, after he's pitched a full 6 innings of baseball, is the one that counts for the narrative, and Goro strikes him out there. And then for his dismal performance of giving up 2 runs across 6 innings, one of which was against the best hitter in professional baseball, Goro is immediately sent down to the minors. Goro's buddy Fox is also sent down to the minors with him. They're on the Salmon's big AAA team, the Cougars. And Goro's first game with that team is against the Oklahoma City Falcons. And their big player is Gibson Jr., son of the man who killed Goro's father by beating him with a baseball. Gibson Jr. mocks Goro for having a dead dad, and then hits a home run off of the only pitch you throw in this part of the story. After another round of "haha, your dad's dead," Goro charges Gibson and they fight on the field. And so with just one pitch thrown with his time at the Cougars, Goro is fired. But the coach knows some other teams that are having tryouts and writes Goro an introduction letter to take to them. Fox and Sanchez see Goro off and exit the narrative never to return. Goro heads to Florida, which is the training camp for the Indiana Hornets. But he's pickpocketed and loses the letter of introduction. Fortunately, he runs into Alice, the teenage owner of the Hornets' AAA team, the Memphis Bats. The Bats have a losing record and badly need a closing pitcher, and there's a game happening right now. So Goro, why don't you go in and throw a few innings? The Bats are actually winning 3-1 when Goro takes the mound in the ninth, so all you have to do is not lose the game. Goro is initially upset that he's relegated to playing AAA ball, but he quickly bonds with his teammates on the Bats. Particularly Sanders, who's aging out of baseball, has no chance of playing in the major league, and just wants to dedicate himself to making the Bats the best team possible. Goro's willing to get in on this plan, even though 2 scenes before his only desire was to get away from the Bats and back into the major league. Then the story quickly skims over a lot of their season, and the Bats have brought up a new catcher from AA, Keene. With Keene coming on, Sanchez is going to retire. After you play another 9th inning, Keene says that he's hurt his leg and can't be a catcher for a short while, letting Sanchez back in. You play another 9th inning, and then you find out that Sanders has a son who has never watched him play. It's the big game that will decide if the Bats will go into the playoffs, and Keene says that he's still hurt. It's the bottom of the 9th, the score is tied, Sanchez is up to the plate, and after a strike, he hears the voice of his son in the crowd. With that, Sanders takes a big swing and... Oh, okay, that's not good. Let's go back and try that again. Okay, Sanders does a big swing, and there we go, home run. He meets his wife and son after the game, and his wife encourages him to stick with baseball. With the Bats in the playoffs, they're first going up against the Falcons, and Gibson Jr. shows up again. He makes a bet with Goro. If Goro can strike him out, then Gibson Jr. will fly to Japan and apologize to Goro's father at his grave. But if Gibson Jr. can get a home run off of Goro, then Goro has to leave America forever. You start the game with the Falcons up 6 runs in the first inning, and it's still the top of the first inning when you take over. The bases are loaded, Gibson Jr. steps up to the plate, and the force of Goro's pitch and Gibson's swing makes the bat explode. There's still 8 innings left in the game. You have to slowly climb your way back, and by slowly climb your way back I mean hit home run after home run. And in the 4th inning, the Falcons pitcher decides to hit Goro with a pitch. The ball breaks Goro's hand, but he can't quit the game now, so he keeps playing with an injured hand, and eventually Gibson Jr. is up to bat again. Or rather, there's a cutscene where Gibson Jr. comes up to bat, because you'll face him a few times before that cutscene occurs. Goro realizes that he's too injured to have proper control over the ball, and so instead, he just has to throw it as hard as possible, something that definitely won't aggravate the injury. This allows him to break his limits, throwing faster than he ever had before. Gibson Jr. is struck out, and the Bats squeak out a narrow victory 16-6. After the Falcons' incredible performance in that game, Gibson is pulled up to the majors immediately. Yes, even though it's playoff season. The World Series approaches, and Goro gets his own offer to go play in the series. But Goro says he's too sick to do it. Really, he feels the need to stay with the Bats until they win their championship. Gibson Jr. takes part in a winning World Series and then immediately goes back to AAA so that he can play in the championship against the Bats. Because that's how all of this works. It's the final game of the series, and who should be in attendance but Gibson Sr., the man who killed Gordo's father. Gibson Jr. realizes that his dad isn't there to see him, he's there to watch Gordo. That's because Gibson Sr. stepped up as Gordo's father figure after killing Gordo's father. And while Gibson Sr. was living in Japan and playing for the Japanese leagues, his wife and daughter died, and he became estranged from Gibson Jr. So big family drama, all hinging on this final match. The game goes to the 10th inning, regardless of how well you were doing before that point, and it's revealed that Gibson Sr. actually does care about Gibson Jr., and Gibson Jr. and Gordo face off one final time. Regardless of how that turns out, you're told that the Bats win the championship. Gordo's offer to play for the Indiana Hornets is rescinded though because he faked his illness, and he'll have to play in the minor leagues for one more year before getting a chance at the majors. The end. You watch the credits roll and are astounded that there were only 3 programmers who worked on the game. I'm a bit dubious that anything could have saved Major Dream, Major Wii Perfect Closer. This kind of licensed game has a very high crap to quality ratio. The licensed games that are both good and use their license well are the rare exceptions. So even if there weren't all of the technical problems, the gameplay would still be awful. And even if that was patched up to standard baseball game quality, you still have the story mode that plays out more like a recap episode than an actual plot. You'd pretty much have to throw out all of Perfect Closer and start over if you wanted any chance of it being good. Instead, what we have is one of the most notorious video games of its time, a game that was laughable to look at, painful to play, and could break your system just for good measure. Perfect Closer is peak bad game. I think the only way it could get worse is if you threw your Wiimote, hit yourself in the head, and gave yourself a brain aneurysm, just like Goro's father.